and welcome to the September Basic Sampler here at Close to Home in Southington. So remember to bring in your completed August block beginning this Saturday, September 20th, through the end of September, September 30th, to receive your September Basic Kit free. All right. New classes are forming for free motion quilting, a beginning quilting series, a little twister table topper, and a patchwork Christmas stockings. So all of which can be viewed here in the store, and sign up are starting, so you can sign up online or you can come into the store and pick up your supply list and take a look at the projects. We have a new selection of Finish the Bolts at 50% off. They have been set aside for you to choose from. And also the month of September, Bernina is having a trade-in event, so you can bring in any sewing machine and receive 25% off the Bernina's MSRP. So it's a great deal if you're looking to get rid of an old machine and pick up something that will last you quite a long time. So come on over. We're going to be talking a little bit about the block today. It is the Creative Grids Cat's Cradle ruler. And this is the Cat's Cradle block right here. This is a finished 4-inch block. So we're going to be making this block in the video using the Cat's Cradle. There is a Cat's Cradle XL, which makes 4.5 finished and larger. So that one will not work with this block. So it's just the regular Cat's Cradle ruler. Strip sets, we're not going to go over in the video. It's just sewing a white strip to a blue strip and subcutting them into the 4.5-inch segments. And then the center square, we're going to be just going back over a couple of the basics using the folded corner clipper tool. Okay, so I'll do maybe 1 or 2 corners for that. But it's much like what we did for the corners of our border. All right. Cutting instructions. The nice thing about the Cat's Cradle is we're not cutting any triangles or anything. We're starting with squares and rectangles. So we're going to start with the red 4.5 for our center block, followed by 4 2 3/4 for the Cat's Cradle. The flower unit or the flower fabrics, we're going to be cutting a 2 3/4-inch strip, and those are all going to be 3 3/4 long, so you get 4. Also for the Cat's Corner, Cat's Cradle corner for our unit today, and then we're going to need 4 2.5-inch squares. For the center, the white, I need you to cut a strip that's 5 inches wide and subcut into 2 6s. That also is for the Cat's Cradle tool. And my strip sets are 2.5-inch strips. Now these whites are going to be considerably longer than the blue 2.5, but just go with it. You'll have extra white strip, but don't worry about it. We have plenty of blue to make our strip sets. All right. So just a heads up on that. All right, so let's go over the Cat's Cradle tool. I definitely want to get to the Cat's Cradle tool. The ruler itself has many sections to it. It has a cutting chart, which is really important. Let's see if I can show you the cutting chart. Can I bring it up? And like I said, it makes finished blocks that are 1.5 by 1.5 finished, 2-inch finished, 2.5, 3, 3.5, and 4. So we're going to be working with the bottom one, which is a 4-inch finished. It tells me how many pieces to cut, which I've given you in the cutting instructions. The first thing we're going to be looking for are some markings on this ruler where it says place on the seam line. We're also going to be looking at marking the sew sewing line, and then of course way up here the trimming tool, which we love a good ruler that trims right to size and matches up every time. So you're going to see how quick and easy we're going to get 2 of these cat's cradle units made with just these 5 pieces. So the first step we're going to do is to take our squares, our 2 3/4 squares, and sew them to the ends of our 2 3/4 by, I think it was 3 3/4 rectangles. All right, so let's go ahead and sew 1/4 of an inch on the ends of these. So we'll get right into it. All right, so foot up. Wake up. I'm using the new Brother Celeste CX1. It's a sewing machine only. What I like about it is when I start my seam, my 1/4 inch seam, it has a LED light. So if I look at this, I can see my light is kind of going at a little bit of an angle. So I know to just keep my fabric lined up like this. And it's a really nice way to just know that I'm not moving this around. I really have a nice visual, oh geez, sorry, a nice visual of how it is going to line up. So let's get the next one lined up. Turn that down a little bit. So here's my line. It's just, I can shut it off, I can turn it on, turn it off, but I'm using the edge of my Brother presser foot and just kind of making sure that I'm feeding it nice and straight. All right, so these units will get pressed toward the rectangles. So we're going to open up these squares a little bit. So if it gets pressed toward the rectangle, the main thing to remember is that we're pressing away from the square. And that's really important, a key to having this this block come out nice and square. All right, so now that I have my 2 units, I'm going to put my squares at the opposite ends, and I'm going to sew along one long side. So again, these should be the same size. They're not going to meet, that's okay, but my corners are lined up, and I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way down. So let's do that. Yep. To flip, so make sure you hold that down, the seam. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is, much like our Eleanor Burns Flying Geese ruler, I need this seam to press in this direction and this one in this, again, toward the rectangles. But I don't want a little twist in the center, so I'm just going to take a little snip right to the seam allowance, right between the 2 units. So somewhere right about there. Now we can press our 2 units, one in this direction, and this one will lay nice and flat as well. All right. So we're going to grab a friction pen and our cat's cradle ruler, and now we're going to look at the place on the seam line, which is right here. These little words called place on seam line, and this intersection goes right to the edge, and that's what we want to place on our seam, and then we're going to draw our line on the sewing line where it says mark. So as we look at our unit, we see these blue seams right here that I just sewed, and I'm just going to line up the ruler right on top of those lines where it says place on the seam lines. Everything pretty much lines up to the corner, across the point of my intersection, and off to the side. And you can kind of use these little dash lines as a guide as well, but if they're off a little, go with placing them on the seam line. All right, and we're just going to mark it. Now this has got great grips to it because it's a creative grid. We know it's going to stay in place. And now this line intersects right in the corner because I'm going to be sewing, right? We're marking on the sewing line, and this little point here intersects my seams. So we're going to flip it around. We're going to do it again to the other side, and we're going to go ahead and sew 2 lines right on the green friction line. Okay, so I want that right into the intersection. All right, now that I have my lines drawn, both of them intersecting right at the corner because I'm going to be sewing on there and I don't want to cut my corner off. I'm going to find the right side of my fabric. It goes up. The unit goes right side down. So it should sit right on top of each other. And I'm going to sew right on that line. And then I'll sew on the other one. All right? So I don't really have to worry too much about it. But I can line up my red line, my laser line, right with that line and just make sure I'm right on the money. Just want to get this right on top of each other. Don't want to flip it. There we go. It's just going to sew right on the line, and I have a nice visual with that laser light. This machine also comes with a regulated free motion foot. So when you're free motion quilting, all your stitches remain the same length, which is a wonderful, wonderful feature. All right, so keep going. Oh, here I go again. If it happens, you know, go back out, take a couple pieces of threads out just to lay that nice and flat. Okay, so we're going to go back to the ruler one more time. And this time we're going to be looking for the lines that say 1/4 inch seam allowance on the edges. They're pretty much on 2 sides of the ruler, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and right here where it says 1/4 inch seam allowance. Either of these sides will work, but what we're going to do is lay that solid line of the 1/4 inch seam allowance on the line we just stitched, or the green friction line in this case. And we're going to go ahead and place that down, and we're going to trim it to 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, just like that. We'll turn this one around and do the same. Find your 1/4 inch seam allowance on the ruler, lay it on the seam or the line that you just sewed on the green friction pen, and we're going to trim this one as well. So you see, there isn't really a whole lot to trim away on these at all. All right, we're going to give this a good pressing, and again, it's going to go away from the square, so it's getting pressed toward that white. Okay, make sure that's nice and open. You don't want any little folds in your seam. Nice and flat. So I'll do it to the same to this one and to these 2 units as well. And then the very last thing is my favorite part, and that's trimming this to size. So So we're going to take our unit with the square at the top, place our ruler, find the 4-inch, here maybe I should put it under the white for now. Find the 4-inch marking in the corner, which is right here. We haven't used this corner at all, but our finished size for this block is 4 inches. So my red square is going to be lined up with that 4-inch mark. Also, this diagonal line is going to match up with the point of my white triangle. And one more thing to look is this vertical, or this, I don't know, I guess whatever, this half square line is going to line up with the bottom one of this dashed line, which is pointing to the 4. So we got lots of places to look to trim. So here we are. We're going to line this up right inside the 4. We're going to take that diagonal line and we're going to place it right on that seam, and this line's going to come right out to the corner. Go ahead and trim this side. All right, we'll give the unit a 180-degree turn. Line that up again. Now this little point of this square that we just lined up is going to just touch where the red one is, all right? And we have that nice dashed line going across. Everything's coming out nice and even, and we can go ahead and trim the large triangle away. So you'll see, using the ruler, that lining up that dashed line is going to intersect right in the corners and give us a nice angle so that we can use our 1/4 inch seam allowance and not cut anything off. Okay, that is a cat's cradle unit. Pretty much easy, you know, pretty easy. And these cuts that I gave you are going to make 4 of them. Okay, last thing I just want to show you is really quickly how we're going to do this square and a square. And again, it's much like how we did our corners. We're just going to lay one of our squares, 2.5-inch squares, in the corner of our 4.5-inch centerpiece. We're going to line this up here, 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 here. We're going to trim it. We're going to go sew it. We're going to iron it, and then we're going to turn our corner, and we're going to do it again. We're going to put this on, we're going to trim it, we're going to sew it, we're going to press it, and we're going to turn it. Every time doing a corner as we go. So I'm not going to sew, but I think you understand how to go to get all 4 corners. And that's this unit right here, which is the folded corner clipper and our 4 cat's cradle. Feel free to turn your units in any way you want. Maybe you want the blue strip sets to be on the outside. That's perfectly fine. But here is our block. It is a 9 patch. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching.